welcome back. Hope you had a good lunch, filled up with carbohydrates. You know, the brain runs on sugar. Got to fill up so you stay sharp. Just like us and the panelists here at this table. Totally. I have some 3 good guests with me. The title of this panel is Efficient Development and Deployment of Enterprise Class AI Projects. Not hobbyist stuff, enterprise stuff. That means big scale, lives at stake, and important stuff. The experts we have here with us will introduce themselves shortly, but if you have any questions or anything else, please write them in the chat, and maybe we'll have time to get through them, but I think we'll have a lot to go through. Please begin by introducing yourselves.
Hello, my name is Mikael Ruohonen, coming from Solita, which is a data AI and digital transformation consultancy. I'm working there as an AI analytics business lead, so helping Nordic enterprises and big organizations to basically do AI transformations, all the way from planning it and to executing and implementing AI applications and solutions.
All right.
I'm Gernot Klein. I'm a field CDO at Dataiku. Dataiku, for those who don't know, it is a low-code or no-code data and AI platform. Before I joined Dataiku, I was a data scientist myself, and then I advised companies who went through digital transformations, and then I led data science and analytics teams at an edtech startup before joining Dataiku. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, excellent.
My
Last
turn?
but not least, hit it.
Hi, Stijn from Collibra. I'm one of the co-founders of the company. That's 2008 that we started the company, so it's a long time in data land. And today I run Collibra's data office. So I'm actually responsible for our data strategy, our data products and infrastructure, and in the process, using our own product. What Collibra does is we are a data and analytics and AI governance vendor, or as we call it since Q1 of this year, unified governance. Because data and AI is, because of this disruption, increasingly getting together. But we'll talk all about that in a moment.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you know, I like to try to hit it off by finding sort of commonalities. You mentioned low code, no code. You're talking about something that is close to the business.
Yep.
You guys work with pretty low-level AI stuff.
Yes.
And my sense of what Gen AI has been able to do, and one of the reasons it's really gotten a grip in public discourse, is precisely because it makes certain things more accessible to people that aren't engineers always. So in terms of the justification for the projects that you're seeing, are they still very engineering focused when we differentiate, for example, between advanced analytics projects that used to come up and new ones that maybe are spearheaded by Gen AI desires? Are they sort of spearheaded more by business, or is it much of the same?
There is more spearhead from the business, but also from individuals. The focus has been shifting a bit from this kind of a business process transformation to how individuals in different roles and tasks can utilize this technology.
Do they have a better understanding of how it affects them in their role? Is that the reason why?
Yeah, because it's more accessible and they can test themselves easily different technologies.
But I'm wondering, so let's dive into this. I mean, one of the challenges that I found when I was working with advanced analytics a lot was problem formulation. You know, what is it we're actually trying to solve, and that kind of being a bit scientific and structured about problem formulation. Is there a difference between people's conception of what was the problem before and versus things that you can use Gen AI for now?
Maybe if I jump in on that one, I think what has changed with this whole Gen AI and when it came up with last couple of years is really that it's been so much in the news that suddenly AI and data hasn't been just an IT or data team focus, but it suddenly went up to the C-level or close to the C-level. And I think there's been this, well, they're pushing it back down or saying, well, we need to do it. And it's often not necessarily well defined what are they supposed to do. And I think it's still, I wouldn't say it's IT driven. I think business gets much more involved, but I think it's still at this stage where companies saying, well, we're trying to experiment with Gen AI or now AI agents even. And they haven't gone yet really saying, well, what are really our business value cases where we can bring it in? So it's a lot of saying, well, we bring this chatbot in, we bring this kind of rec tool in so they can answer our policies easier. But I don't think they have really identified the key value-driving business cases. In a lot of cases, some obviously have, but a lot of cases it sounds like they're still experimenting with it rather than bringing it really into the core of the business.
I think this ties into one thing that has to do with having your business in order before you start to experiment, which is not always a strict necessity, but it certainly makes life easier. Do you feel sort of a shift in people's maturity when it comes to conceptualization of what they can do if they're data driven and if they have their IT affairs in order and that kind of thing? Or is this just a new spin on an old problem?
Well, I think what I'm seeing a lot is a new chasing of the next shiny widget, a big one, AI, and organizations making the same mistakes every time they've chased a new widget. So yes, it would be better if their house was in order and if they took care of their data, but that I don't think is immediately the priority. First priority seems to be like, we got to do something with AI, do something with AI. And by the way, that experimentation, in my experience, is happening on the technology side and also on the business side. They're all experimenting. And I think inevitably, like what organizations will relearn is that with this AI shiny widget, the importance of them taking care of their data, getting that in order, is going to be extremely visible. Not immediately, not overnight, but in the next 3 years, you see how that, we have to take care of our data asset, because otherwise the AI beast is fed with bad food and it spits out bad results. It's going to be glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
So, the structure, this rigor is going to get more important. That's why you see now in the CIO, all of a sudden starting to talk about data governance and we have to take care of our data. It's starting to happen. But there seems to be some delay. We were just talking about that earlier, how on the business side, it's very easy for people to say, well, I'm just going to use this AI in the cloud. Why would I invest in taking care of my data? They don't always make that connection. It's on us, data professionals, to proactively and constructively inject ourselves in the conversation and make sure people do understand that connection. Otherwise, they're going to make big mistakes.
Maybe just to jump on that one, I think, especially as you said, there's a lot of push on do AI, use AI tools, and there's suddenly budget and funding for that. And it's always the question, well, where is that budget and funding suddenly coming from? And often it doesn't get recreated from completely somewhere else, but it's being pushed or moved over from mostly data or data governance. So I think, as you said, there's going to be this awakening, potentially this awakening for some companies who save money on these core or the basics in order to get AI, and that suddenly they realize, well, we built something, but we don't have the foundations anymore because we saved money there. And I think that's going to be, as you said, a real awakening which is coming.
And building on that, there definitely is this kind of top management pushing, let's use AI. And then on ground level, individuals are trying, testing out, or teams and different parts of the organization are testing, but not many organizations still have this kind of a joint. This is the roadmap, this is how it links to our business targets, key things we need to achieve, and how and map that, the AI use cases or capabilities to that. That's missing in many cases still.
Yep, definitely.
I'm wondering though, I think we need to get into the differentiation between experimentation and what's enterprise class, and maybe we're touching on that already. We'll sort of approach it from different directions, but I do sympathize. I'm going to try and play devil's advocate here, but from a business developer perspective, or maybe from a founder perspective or something like that, let's say you are a retailer and you have your brick and mortar store and you realize, all of my customers are on social media. Maybe we need to have an e-commerce strategy, not just a website or something like that. And then the IT guy says, well, we need to get our CMS system in order, we need an ERP system, we need all this kind of stuff. And they say, I was like, whatever, nerd, right? That's not what's going to make our customers buy more stuff. That's like the nice to have. I just want my website. Why should they get involved in those kinds of discussions? I won't speculate. I have my own ideas, but I want to hear sort of your reaction to, is that a reasonable take? Don't you think that that's, how people could reasonably think about all the platform and enterprise-ready hardened stuff?
I think that definitely happens, right? Because it's easy for somebody like that to say, in the metaphor of the e-commerce versus just put up a website, right? Yeah. It's easy for somebody on the business now to say, do something with AI, here's some money. And it's easy for a technology person then to actually build something that looks cool, very quickly even. But then there's a lot of things that still need to happen, especially in enterprises. For example, the organization has to authorize that specific use case. Hey, should we even be doing this? Because a company could say, hey, let's do some sentiment analysis, let's put some patient data in the AI. But there's ethics and policies and rules the organization has that you need to adhere to, AI or no. So that exists. But then you put this into production, the first prototype you make, and then you start hitting all sorts of other problems. Like the chatbot is now starting to advertise for your competitor instead of for you. The CEO is not going to be happy, right? So turning that prototype into a full-blown system, everybody can make a RAG architecture over the weekend, but turning into a situation where people can actually talk to their data might be a project that takes a year.
Right.
Because there's a lot of things to figure out, or accuracy to increase, for example.
Right.
Maybe if I add to that, because I have a slightly different perspective. I think I fully agree with all of that, but I think if from an IT side, if someone says from the business, we want an e-commerce website because this is where the business is or the money is, I think that's a great opportunity for IT, because rather than saying, we got to sort out all these 5, 10, 12 legacy systems first, you got to go by slicing it. You go, that is an opportunity. I have the business support, so you take it down. And I agree, you still need to sort out certain bits of the data, but it needs to be focused to that use case, right? But you have that use case, so take it.
Yeah.
Because for years, and I've been working in that space, for years there's been these, for example, big data cleaning projects being done by corporations. So they went and they were saying, we're doing this big data cleaning, and they spent millions on that. And then it was like, so what? Where's the return on investment? Well, no, because they didn't think about the use case. So they had to clean data for a while, and obviously for a while, because often, it deteriorated again. But the cleaning or the sorting out system on its own, I don't think brings a lot of value to any organization. It needs to have this straight up-down business case where the value sits. So I would say take it, just make sure that you do the basics for that use case.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if the person on the business is like, hey, I want that website, jump on the opportunity.
Absolutely, exactly, yeah.
And then use that small bit of value
to build up
all the work that
exactly.
still needs to happen.
Exactly, yeah.
But the big thing there is that I agree that it's good that there's all those use cases, and let's grab them and start to work them. But the big problem we have had years on years already before LLM era is that once you get that use case idea from the business, then the IT or the data guys start to do something by themselves. The experimentation needs to involve the business as well, not just the MVP or the productionization phase, but also the experimentation phase. Because it's easy just, they want a recommendation system. Okay, let's build something. And then there's this kind of mismatch that expectations done and the end result isn't something we want to be.
My job here is done. Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely agree with that. I wonder if there's something about tech debt in here, something that maybe you guys want to comment on, because if we keep with this e-commerce idea here, let's say that the CEO's like, I can get this guy to do it in a day, right? The demo style thing. And the expert's like, yeah, I can do that in a day. And he puts up a crappy website that's not compatible with the systems you have, and it starts making money. And maybe it can pay for the backporting and the problem fixing and everything. Now, in order to do that kind of calculation, you need to be treating IT not as a cost center where you just sink money and you manage your old systems, but like a credit card where you have to pay interest on old stuff that's not providing value anymore, and you have to sort of treat it like a product that has a life cycle and all that kind of stuff. So maybe there needs to be some stuff in place, but what is your sort of experience with the justification? I mean, I guess this ties into a lot of things like justifications of big projects that are multi-year that need to be shut down maybe when they're not providing value and that kind of stuff. I think we're heading into enterprise territory here, where everybody knows the ERP system where the migration project ends after the guy that started it has gone into pension because it's such a long freaking project. What do you guys believe about the hack and slash approach? Should you build the ship while you sail it? Or, because, otherwise you risk with the waterfall approach where it's like you can't do anything until your house is in order, and then you end up with these data cleaning projects that are multi-year, and we can't do anything because our data's not in order first. What is the right way to approach it? When I think that's the kind of feedback you get from IT a lot, that they say, we can't do this because we have to get our systems in order first. What is the right way to approach that?
I'm a big believer on doing it them both. So
at the same time.
Enabling this fast innovation use case by use case, but you need to have some kind of a, be it IT platform team or someone, center of excellence, thinking the big picture. What kind of a platform should we be building? What kind of capabilities?
Center of excellence?
Yeah, for example, in some organizations. So enable the fast innovation, let them lose a bit, but bring capabilities, shared capabilities at the parallel. But that needs funding as well, that shared capabilities. And if it's only driven by one business unit or team, then that rarely happens. But if it's really top management saying we need to do an AI transformation and enable this, then there needs to be money for the use cases, but also for the capabilities and platforms.
Right.
And run them parallel.
What's your sense? Get things in order first, or hack and slash? Or both? I'm a fan of doing both at the same time. I feel like but that's only because I get to do the fun part and somebody else has to do the data cleaning. Still.
So which part is your funnest, hack or slash?
Tear apart and rebuild. Always. Do things the hard way.
I don't think, I mean, I hate to go and do both because you typically have to make a decision somehow, but I don't think it can be just one or the other, right? Because it's this famous bit, little bit, how do you innovate while keeping everything else going? So you need to keep your bases going, be it old IT systems, while at the same time bringing this agility to build something new, which doesn't potentially fulfill all of the requirements that IT would normally have to us for a system. So I think, and sometimes it depends how you set it up. Is it a center of excellence? Is it a different business unit who does this kind of innovation? But I think you need both, right? You need for your core processes, you need this established and system that you need to maintain, and the depth, you call it the technology depth. Well, any system you install is automatically basically starts to be the legacy system. You just need to maintain it. But I think at the same time, today you need to have this ability to quickly try something out and push it as quickly into production, even if it's not perfect yet, right? So in that respect, I would say go with what you said, do both, but it's a bit of a cop-out, I guess. But you need to do both.
I agree. I would even make it a little bit more specific. Let's take your example of the e-commerce website, right? So old brick and mortar, now there's a tech guru who's like, I can make an e-commerce website overnight.
Yeah.
Does it? Well, then there's still the business impact that has to come. So if you're serious as a business, going forward, this is the future. Brick and mortar goes, including e-commerce. You can see that business strategy. Then you're going to hack and slash that prototype a gazillion times over, right? You're just going to iterate that as you learn how to do that business. If you say, well, that business is not for us because we just want to stay brick and mortar, you can slash it and not continue it. But then you're sort of choosing not to go into a certain future, right? So you're risking part of your business. I think what's slightly different about this AI game now is that it's not just for the business. So let's say you're like a call center. You're gonna have to do this, right? Because there's efficiency gains that are too big to ignore. So you're gonna have to do this. In that same metaphor of the e-commerce website. But what's different about this AI disruption is that it applies to everything. So you can't ignore it because it would be like ignoring the internet coming. And everybody in the organization, there's cohort after cohort of young students now every year entering the workforce, and they're just expecting AI to be there. Just like 10 years ago, you go into a company, you expect the internet to be there, right? Or 10 years before, you expect mobile phones to be there. Now, people will expect AI to be there. So it's no longer just related to your business strategy. Do I have to go e-commerce or not? For my business, do I have to go AI or not? It's just going to become a de facto way of working. Just like the internet, just like the mobile phone or the desktop computer or things before that. It's inevitable.
Well, I think there's like a third category of utility now with Gen AI that didn't exist with advanced analytics, which is with advanced analytics, you can increase the efficiency of your operations. Maybe you can create a new product. But now with Gen AI, there's a third reason, which is it's where your customers are. So the reason fashion retailers are on social media is because that's where their customers hang out.
Right.
And so if a customer is asking, I'm going to go hiking this weekend, I want to buy boots, hiking boots, and they ask the LLM which is the best hiking boot, that's a way people are going to be doing research now, and that's where they're going to find product information and stuff. And so it's important for organizations to understand how that stuff is set up.
Yep.
But I guess there's a life cycle thing that's a little bit different now from advanced analytics. So I find when I hire people that either they're very good software developers, like enterprise grade software, or they're very good scientists / analytics people. And they often have to learn each other's skills. What is the difference with like enterprise AI and advanced analytics and that kind of stuff in terms of the, if we talk first with the engineering side, the skill set that is really missing, and maybe understanding of enterprise support tools such as things like data cataloging and whatnot. Like what are the big gaps right now that we need to see people get upskilled in on the tech side of things?
I mean, maybe if I go for, I don't think, I mean, there's obviously new parts to it, absolutely with Gen AI, and that's there, but the biggest tail is like a little bit like an iceberg, right? You've got Gen AI on top of it now, but I mean, everything below the surface, I don't think there's that much new things which people haven't been talking about for the last 10 years, right? As you say, data governance, you need the data pipelines, you need to connect all your system, you need to do it as efficiently as possible and automatic, and then you need to have a development environment which is as easily to go through back and forth to do multiple iterations as possible, and then ideally that development environment mirrors, or at least is closely attached to the production environment, so that moving one to the other, moving from development into production, isn't a big development, as you say, a big software development on its own. So I think there are tasks around in terms of Gen AI specific, which are new and people need to skill up on the data science side as well as on the engineering side. But the large tail has basically been there for the last 10, 15 years, and it's not going to change either, right? Data governance, the data quality, having access to your data, all of that is absolutely crucial now, maybe even more crucial now, because people are using these large language models, which I think someone said has by now 98% of all public available data in being trained on, but only 1%, according to that talk, 1% of company data. But that's where the value sits, right? I mean, the company needs their data in the large language model, and if they don't have it governed and in good state, then they're going to get very little, or at least less value out of that they potentially could get out of them.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
I agree that it hasn't really changed during the LLM era in a way. The scientists, they need support in DevOps and how to productionize stuff, and the engineering side, and upskill that. And then the software engineers have problems still, like in pre-LLM when you built predictive maintenance or recommendation systems or whatnot. They had the problem to understand that these are non-deterministic systems, and that needs certain attention. You're not building this kind of if and else software, but there is uncertainty involved, and how that is tackled in the software development and design is new to them in often cases.
Do you is that your sense that it's a lot of the same kinds of challenges, or are there any particular to Gen AI that you would say are?
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges that are similar or the same, but I do think there are new challenges also. So to your point earlier about the software engineers and the analytics people, they will need to learn from one another.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You see that data people are trying to borrow techniques from software engineering that they want to apply to data engineering, for example. So you see that cross-pollination happening. But you also see that the software engineers will need to learn something from the data science teams. Why? Because software engineers are used to handling deterministic systems. If, then, else. And the if, then, else is always giving the same input and output. Now you're dealing with non-deterministic systems. Right? So if the software engineer wants to master those systems in production, they will need to borrow techniques from the data scientists to deal with a level of uncertainty in the system. And we're going to have to harness those LLMs into their agents to make it manageable for the organization. So yes, we will need to learn things from one another, absolutely. And I think what it will also surface on the business side in the organization is all of those do good things with data stuff. Cataloging, quality, governance, all of that will become more important, because otherwise the non-deterministic factor of that agent system is going to be too big. If the quality of the data is too low, the agent is going to spit out noise. We know this, but the software engineers might not immediately be aware of that. They put something in, something comes out, they think it's fine.
Yeah.
But this needs to be tested
Yeah.
with a certain quality standard for the outcome for the business.
Yeah.
And that's where the data skills come in.
The what?
The data skills.
Right. So are those skills that the business needs to upskill in, or do you mean the software engineers, or where does the onus fall? So for instance, if we're talking about LLM systems, you might have, you want to have evaluation systems to see that maybe the model is reliable under these circumstances, but under these ones it doesn't give the output that we're expecting.
Yep.
And reasonably, you would think that the software engineer doesn't know enough about the business to determine whether the output is good or not. How do we test it then? That kind of stuff. It seems to me like this maybe puts more business-like requirements that haven't really existed before. I think you guys work with, the customers that use your systems are fairly mature customers. But in my experience, there's not a lot of customers that have AI services that are complex, running internally one thing, but certainly not customer facing, with the exception of recommender systems and those kinds of pretty basic things that you don't need like giant neural networks for. And so going from using them as sort of analytics tools to going to making basically software services, like a video game, something that is customer facing, that is maybe now mission critical because you're making money on it, you don't want it to go down. Data scientists maybe don't have those skills, but maybe they shouldn't have those skills because maybe it's the business person that knows what makes a product perform well or not. But then they need to learn lots of data stuff, which is also challenging.
Yeah, no one should need. It's a cross-disciplinary team which is needed, and of course they need to understand each other. But we can't expect that a data scientist takes up the full business side and the engineering side, does it him or herself. It needs all those skills, business skills, data science skills, and the engineering skills to do that. And especially the business side, it's good that you raise that, because the non-deterministic aspect brings that it will be wrong at some points. Let's assume we have built an intelligent process automation using LLMs. It does something to unstructured data. What if the output is wrong? Is it how bad thing it is? Is it like no deal breaker?
Yeah.
Do we need the validation system or something like
Yeah.
that in place? Or is it something acceptable if it happens 5% of the time in a way? And the business is the only one who can state that, like what's acceptable and how do we need to mitigate the risk?
Yeah.
Which there always is in
Well,
the
maybe a comparable system is like a fraud detection system.
Yeah.
Right? How many false positives, how many false negatives? An engineer doesn't know that stuff. Like, what risk are we willing to take? And how much do we have to tune it? And how is it performing now? Oh, there's an uptick in fraud. Does that have something to do with the system, or is it related to the customer and that kind of thing?
I think it's exactly what you're saying. Asking the question, what risk are we willing to take? That's where it starts in this case. Because you have to understand first the risks that come with that new shiny widget of AI, right?
Right.
What risks does it come with? If you think there's no risks, you're just going to see the risks as they explode in your face.
Yeah.
So, but business is willing to take risk. They just need somebody to lay out for them what are the risks with these new systems, and how could we mitigate some of those risks, and what fines or business problems are we willing to deal with if we don't deal with the risks.
Right.
The business can make those choices, but they have to have the question put in front of them in a way that they can understand it. And that's where I think with this new AI some of this challenge lies, because you mentioned earlier enterprises being mature. But I would argue that with this new disruption, it's only 2 years old, remember? So there is no people with maturity in this space. If you take even OpenAI, they just put their enterprise handbook, right? Where the first step is set up an evaluation framework. Well, I'm sorry, but 3 months ago, that handbook didn't exist, right? So OpenAI, the inventor of all of this, but the real invention from the stuff came from Google originally, right? The transformer. But all of those players, they're coming out with their best practices and maturity handbooks only now, which means that 3 months ago, maybe they didn't have maturity handbooks yet, because the maturity just isn't there. The technology is so early. It would be like asking in 2000, oh, what does it mean to be a mature internet business? Well, the whole .com bubble was happening, so clearly the maturity was not there at all. It took another 10 years before companies started to talk about maturity in the internet.
Yeah.
So I think in the next 3-5 years, you'll see more mature, maturity frameworks and whatnot happening, and that expertise being embedded in people and organizations. Today it's a bit early.
Yeah.
I think maybe just to add on that one, and also this capability gap or skill gap, who has to learn what. I don't think you will ever have some learning everything, the trait of the other person or the other team. So I think, as I think you mentioned earlier, it's especially with Gen AI now, it's become much more important, this cross-discipline working together, because now it's not just software engineers and data scientists or data engineers, which was always already hard enough. And it's not only business people, but now you have compliance people, or you need a lawyer because you want to scope this pilot or the proof of concept. But you need probably a lawyer to tell you, is this according to EU AI Act, is this what risk class might this fall in? Can I actually do it, or where am I? So I think this capability in an organization of working together across disciplines is already and will become much more important.
Crucial.
Because you will never have the software engineer who knows everything about the EU AI Act, or the data scientist, or vice versa. So you need a framework where those people can come together and scope out what needs to be done for this specific AI or Gen AI use case.
But let me ask, actually, because you said something earlier that I wanted to pin, which was a center of excellence. I work at a public service organization that we have a CTO for sure, and we have we know what's going on with the IT, but there's no sort of central directive on how we're supposed to approach AI. Maybe there will be one sort of when one team sort of shows that they have a good idea for where things are headed. But for the time being, everybody sort of does what they want. And it's very nice because if you do that at banks and stuff and you step on people's toes by mistake, you get in big trouble. But at my organization, everybody's pretty nice about, if you did a good job, it's good for you. What do you say about the sort of the benefits versus advantages and disadvantages of having it a little bit more sort of whole hand centralized versus having a few more teams distributed, working independently?
I think it's absolutely crucial because, just like you said, new organization, this whole data, it's not just data, but AI governance, and be it related to the EU AI Act or other regulations in the States also, it always still is a bit of an afterthought. So you say there's a developer team and they come up with a good job and everyone's happy, but I think it needs to change a little bit, because I think the risk is, as you said, the risk that the organization are going to take is just going to get bigger and bigger when they use LLMs or Gen AI in more generally. And I think what you need to do now, what organizations should be doing already now, is change the way that their development teams are working. So they should push down these frameworks in clear working instructions. How should you do? At what point do you need to do what? And what documentation do you really need to do at what point, according to the risk classification, for example? Because at the moment, I think everyone's still operating on this, hopefully the data scientist is thinking about that, or if not he, then at least the team lead, or maybe the department lead. But I don't think that's fair anymore, because it's got so complicated with the regulations that I think companies need to bring those into a framework, so that the data scientist basically taken by hand saying, okay, at this stage you need to make documentation about the data choices, the model choices, and all of that as easy as possible, so that it really happens. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that they're being slowed down. It just means they're hopefully being a bit more structured, rather than hoping that someone does it anyway because, they're just a good employee. But I think it needs to be more structured now.
I have two actually good questions now that I'm curious to hear everybody's response. I hope you guys fight a little bit about what's right. Build versus buy, and cloud versus on-prem. There's been a bit of a movement this past year, I experienced from various customers, that people are repatriating things from the cloud. They all have different reasons for why they want to bring it back. Some say that it's cost. Some say that it's, who knows what's happening in the US? We can't afford to have it in an American hyperscaler. They all have different reasons for why they want to do it. And then the second one is we can't just have one big platform that does everything. We want to have small tools, and we want to maybe build them ourselves because we have very unique needs, or something else. What are your spontaneous thoughts on those two? Cloud versus on-prem, and build versus buy.
I can start.
Yeah.
So cloud versus on-prem. our market typically is enterprise, and what I observe in that reality is hybrid multi-cloud. So why hybrid? Because they're on-premise, that's what it was. And they're going to the cloud, but that takes time, and some things might never move. I mean, companies still have mainframes today, right? Those are from a long, long time ago, and they're still around. So in that sense, it's going to be hybrid, in my view. And then build versus buy, I think companies are doing both right now, for sure. But I think easily more than 80% of the AI is going to be buy. Why? Well, they have Office, right? They have all these tools, Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, whatever. All of those tools have AI baked into them because all the technology vendors have felt the push of the disruption and said, okay, what am I doing with this?
Yeah.
Which features can I build that have AI in it? So my argument is that most of the AI that's going to enter into companies is already there by the tools that they have. If you use any kind of Excel spreadsheet or Google PowerPoint today, there's AI in there. And that AI is more mainstream immediately compared to whatever magic you can cook up yourself. I mean, if you build something in your own company to roll it out to the whole organization, 300,000 people, that takes a while. Whereas Office is already there.
Regarding the on-prem or versus cloud, I would say mainly cloud or hybrid cloud, and then there are certain compelling use cases where the on-prem is like edge processing or certain cases where that's clear place. But mainly cloud still, because there you get this, that you have this software as a service services there which have the security embedded, and there's a lot of benefits there, even though some are considering the cost factor. But regarding the buy versus make, I completely agree that big portion of the AI will or has already come to the organization through the off-the-shelf tools or SAP, Salesforce, all this business software having the AI capabilities. And now regarding the build side, it's more crucial than ever to focus what are the key differentiator use cases where you want to be better than the others, and which you want to build yourself with your own data. And maybe those focus more on the not individual performance, but more to the business processes, supply chain optimization, whatnot. It's kind of bigger business processes and how we want to embed AI and differentiate there. So it's more important than ever to do the evaluation correctly and then select, do you buy it or do you build it yourself?
What do you say?
I think on the buy versus build, I think as you said, there's these big platforms which people already have, and they get basically AI or Gen AI through the back door a little bit, and that will happen because they're not going to rip those out and they're not going to rebuild these little things themselves. I think for me it's more, and I think you mentioned it, when it comes to very specific business use cases that are specific to the business or the department, I think the build is still going to be more beneficial because it can be tailored much more to the specific problem. And it's also, if you buy in a point solution for every little business use case, this ecosystem to orchestrate that or to manage that is going to be impossible. So I think what you need, and I'm biased because we are AI platform provider, of course, but I think you do need a platform from whichever vendor which allows you this flexibility to build out your specific use cases. And if you have very specific things and it's already pre-built, you use it, cool, perfect. But otherwise, you want a structured approach to build out your own very specific use cases, which you don't want to buy in every time, because I think also in the cost dynamics, your building should be better for you in the long term. So that's my view on that one. In terms of on-premise cloud, to be honest, we work with both, so there's no preference from our side. I think there will always be industries or companies which will keep on-premise for very specific reasons. So I don't think it's going to be everyone moves in the cloud or everyone going to go move back into premise. It's going to be this multi-hybrid approach. For very certain use cases, you have it on-premise. For others, you go into the cloud. I don't see yet any reason why it would be just one or the other, to be honest.
I agree with you on the building part, but for a different reason. The best way to get good at stuff is to build it yourself. There's so many teams that I've worked with that have gone to Azure and next, and we have RAG and a chatbot and everything, but they don't get any skills by doing that. And in order to make a compelling, neat product and use case internally and stuff, you need to understand. And I think building is one of the really good ways, getting your data in order. It's not because you have to have every single data bit catalog. but just the activity of taking the time to go through it and the learning process from that, I think, is one of the most valuable things, and one of the things that differentiates enterprise from hobbyists is that you take your learning and your process seriously and you structure it. I'm going to have one hot take question for you all, because now we have raced through our session here. Is this the year of agents? Are we going to see agents automating lots of stuff? What do you say?
2024 was the year of agents.
Agents are already doing stuff and we don't even know it. Is that what you mean?
2023 was the year of LLM. It's an infrastructural innovation. It's commoditized. Look at the prices. And then 2024 is when the agents already started to become popular. So we're already past it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I think agents are there, clearly. I think what I haven't seen yet, and it's a big topic for us, is yes, you can build a agent with very different frameworks, and they're all good. There are a lot of great frameworks out there, and you can build them, and it's reality. As you say, it's not future anymore. I think for me, the bigger thing which I haven't seen yet is organizations really building out agents in scale and having found a framework to manage and orchestrate it. Because if it's complicated to have different data science projects and govern them and manage them, an agent that is, even if it's not autonomous, but semi-autonomous even, I think will get much, much, much more complicated. And I haven't seen that yet. So I think agents, I agree, are there for very specific use cases.
I haven't given my agents the credit card yet.
But the large part, this multi-agent system or ecosystem in a company, I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So it's like they're teenagers, right? They're 15 years old. You don't really dare give them the credit card yet, but you're like, okay.
Yeah, kinda in a way. I agree that there was a lot of talk and the trials and POCs about agents last year, but this year most of the organizations don't have in production systems or large case implementations yet, and that will happen more and more this year, definitely.
Awesome. That's cool. I love hot takes like that. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for this session.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will be back with another session shortly. Stay tuned.